Hello, we're back to It's a Dog's Life, Book 3. Chapter 10 is called On Death Row. When we left off yesterday, we found out that Hank had eaten an ivory dog bar, which made him foam at the mouth. So, here we go. That guy was the dog catcher, see? And when he got out of his pickup and started creeping towards me with a butterfly net, I began to suspect that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Hold still, doggy," he said. "Just 2 more steps and I'll take you for a little ride." Who did he think he was talking to? I mean, how dumb would you have to be to fall for that hold still, doggy business? I showed him a few fangs and gave him a growl, and fellers, he dropped that net and flew into that pickup. Mobile 3 to City Hall. Larry, he attacked me, almost got my leg. For gosh sake, send some police and an ambulance. This mutt has hydrophobia. I ain't kidding. It occurred to me that I had better make a run for the high and lonesome. I could have gone back into the yard, but I didn't want to cause any trouble for Maggie. Not after all she had been so nice and fixed me that special dinner. I headed down south, down the alley, and I was still feeling a little weak, don't you see? And my back end didn't follow my front end real well. By this time, the dog catcher was perched up on the cab of his pickup talking on the radio. "Mobile 3 to City Hall. Suspect is proceeding south, and holy cow, Larry, he's got the blind staggers. Better call him to seal off the whole south end of town, Larry. I mean, he's out of his head and extremely dangerous." I could hear the sirens now, 3 or 4 of them moving down Main Street. I started running. The darn bubbles were coming out of my mouth. What the heck had brought on those bubbles? I'd had indigestion before, ate some aged mutton with a bunch of coyotes one time. It sure made me sick, but I'd never had bubbles, or I'd never had foamed at the mouth. I looked up ahead and saw a police car in the alley, so I veered off to the left and started across a vacant lot, but there was a fire truck coming straight at me. I wheeled around and ran back to the alley, figured I'd better leap up over the fence and vanish into somebody's backyard, but my leaper was out of commission, too weak in the knees. I was trapped against the fence, surrounded by police with guns and firemen with axes and a dog catcher with that net. They were closing in on me. I heard the sound of a fence above me. I looked around and saw that same fat yellow cat with her 3 kittens. "You see, children, the chickens have come home to roost. Crime never pays if you're dumb enough to get caught. Let this be a lesson to you." On a better day, I might have given the cats a few more lessons, but with the Department of Defense closing in on me, I just didn't have time. I looked for a place to run, but they had me cornered. One of the policemen had his shotgun pointed in my direction, and one of the things you learn in security work is that arguing with a shotgun will mess your coat up and produce lead poisoning. Instead of making a run for it, I sat down. The dog catcher came creeping up with his net in the air, and if I'd made the slightest growl, I bet you I would have made him jump back into last week. But I didn't. He dropped that net around me, and I was caught. "Easy now, stand back, boys. I'm telling you, this dog is out of his mind. He tried to tear my leg off back yonder, and when I ran for the pickup, he attacked one of my tires." Just then the guy with the t-shirt, the one who belonged to that sorry collection of cats, came out of the gate and talked to the police. "Yeah, he's the one that tried to kill my cats. I thought there was something weird about him. And he's got rabies, huh? I suspected it all along, sure did." They carried me to the dog catcher's wagon and throwed me in a wire cage and locked the door. Then 2 or 3 of them stood around staring at me and talking. The dog catcher got a long stick and started poking me with it. What was I supposed to do? I bit at the stick a couple of times, and then I bit it in half. "Look at that. Did you see that? We got us a sick dog, boys, and did I tell you about how he tried to attack a child before y'all got here? The heck he did. Yes, sir, I'll tell you this, boys, and it comes from the bottom of my heart. If this town hadn't had a dog catcher, half the little children in the town would have been running around with hydrophobia right this minute. Kids these days are bad enough without hydrophobia. That's right, Bert. The next time the city council takes up the business of salaries, they better remember who goes around saving these little children in our town from these mad dogs. One of the policemen bent down and looked me in the face. He made an ugly face, and I made one right back at him. What do you do with the mad dog, Jimmy Joe? Oh, we'll call the vet out to the pound tomorrow, and he'll run a test. What's the test? Cut off his head and send it to the state lab? Huh? Cut? Say, that didn't sound so good. As a matter of fact, it sounded bad. What the heck did they do if the test came back negative? I had a couple more questions I wanted answers to, but about that time, Jimmy Joe dog catcher got into the pickup and hauled me off to the dog pound. It was on the south edge of town and lonely wind-blown hill. As we approached the place, I could hear the wind moaning through the chain-link fence. Jimmy Joe backed up to a pen with a high fence around it, opened the gate so I could go into the pen. He started poking me again with that darn stick. Go on, you crazy devil, get out of there. This is the end of the road. No more biting innocent children for you, pal. I don't know where he came up with that business about me biting innocent children. I never bit an innocent child in my life. I never even bit one that wasn't innocent. When you're head of ranch security, you don't go around biting kids. Monsters, yes. Coyotes, coons, criminal dogs, yes. But kids, no. Seemed to me that dog catcher needed to have his head cut off and sent to the state lab, in my opinion. I went into the cell and laid down in the back corner. The dog catcher slammed the door and stood there a minute. No collar, no dog tags, no name, no identification. We won't have to feed you long, old pup. You better have a good time tonight because tomorrow... He flashed a big grin, got into his pickup, and drove away. There was something about that dog catcher that I didn't like. Well, I lay there for a long time listening to the wind and thinking about the situation. All at once, I got the feeling that I was being stared at. I raised my head and cut my eyes both sides and perked my ears and tested the wind. Then I saw him, a basset hound in the cell next to me. He had long body, short stubby legs, long drooping ears, and the saddest, most mournful face you ever could imagine. Howdy, he said in a slow-talking voice. My name is Ralph. Hi, I'm Hank the Cowdog, head of ranch security. Welcome to Death Row. Thanks, it's a pleasure. You really mean that? What do you think? He sniffed his nose. I expect not. You scared? Maybe. I'd be scared if I was you. You really got hydrophobia like they said? I don't know. Everybody thinks I do. Maybe I do. And I told him the whole story, starting with the ivory dog bar I ate at Maggie's. And Ralph didn't strike me as being real smart. But I didn't have anything better to do than make conversation with him. It took my mind off my troubles. It took me a while to tell the story, and Ralph's eyelids were drooping when I started. I think it was his normal condition. His whole face drooped, ears, eyes, jowls, everything. He was just droopy kind of dog. Well, by the time I finished the story, he was asleep. Kind of hacked me off, him falling asleep. I got up and sneaked over to the fence, put my mouth right next to his ear and yelled, "Hey!" His whole body rose up off the ground and he said, "Soap." Well, and I said, "Well, soap to you too. You shouldn't go around asking questions if you don't want to know the answers. Even a dog on death row deserves a little courtesy. His eyes blinked. Soap is the answer. Yeah, but what's the question? It doesn't help to know the answer if you don't know what you're talking about. He pushed himself up and walked over to the water pan near the front of the cell. It was dark by this time, and I could hear his claws clicking on the cement floor. He lapped up the water, came clicking back, and sat down. Mouth gets dry when I talk too much. He ran his tongue over his chops and wiped off the excessive water. Seems to me you are a victim of a hoax. Not likely, friend. I've been in security work for a long time. I can smell a hoax half a mile away. But it was soap. You said that before. It doesn't make sense. And it don't make sense now. Well, if you'll shut up a minute, maybe I can explain. I glared at him. You're telling me to shut up? Is that it? That's what I was driving at. I sat down. I can handle that. Tell me about soap. One time they was washing out the dog pens. They don't do it very often, but this time they did. They had some little white bars that had ivory written on them. Okay, them was ivory dog bars, I said. The question here is, why would they be using ivory dog bars to clean a pen? Ralph stuck his nose against the chain link fence. Because it's soap, dope. Huh? You ain't got hydrophobia. You ate a bar of soap is why you was a foaming at the mouth. Wait a minute. Hold everything. I sprang to my feet and began pacing. It's coming clear now. All the clues are pointing in the same direction. At last, the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. I was duped into eating a bar of soap, which explains why it tasted so awful. I knew something wasn't right. Ivory dog bar, indeed. It was soap, Ralph. Don't you get it? They gave me soap. Nothing. Knowing it would produce the symptoms of hydrophobia. So all at once the case is leading in a new and startling direction. You see, Ralph? They not only duped me, but also my sister Maggie, which brings us to the crux of the matter, the throbbing heart of the mystery. I whirled around and faced him. The question now is, who are they and what did they want? Ralph was asleep again. And here is the picture. Who gave Hank soap to eat? Tomorrow we'll read chapter 11, Another Case Solved. Bye.